Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started then if you are ready. I'll begin. So hello and welcome to Advances and Emergent Needs in Paleogeoscience Cyber Infrastructure. This is a webinar series organized by C4P. C4P is the Collaboration and Cyber Infrastructure for Paleogeosciences. It's an EarthCube research coordination network supported by the National Science Foundation. I'm Jack Williams, and I'll be the moderator today, and Leslie Zhu will be running the WebEx. In today's talk, we'll have two presentations, each 20 minutes with roughly 10 minutes for questions after each. We want to keep this to an hour, so I'll be fairly strict about enforcing time limits, and we'll give each speaker a 3-minute warning before the end of their 20-minute time slot. If you have any questions while listening to the presentation, please send them through the WebEx chat window, and then Leslie will read them aloud after the presentation, and you may send in a question at any time. All presentations and follow-up discussion will be publicly archived on the EarthCube website and at the C4P YouTube channel at youtube.com/Cyber4Paleo. Our first speaker today is David Arctur of the University of Texas, Austin, who will be speaking about community engagement activities by the EarthCube governance group. Our second speaker today is Robert Corrigan of the Smithsonian, who will be speaking about the Encyclopedia of Life. And we'll begin today with David Arctur. Welcome, and you may begin when ready.
Okay, thanks. Hello, everybody. I'm going to be talking to you today from a couple of roles. I've got two positions right now, and one of them is on the EarthCube governance community engagement team, and that's why I'm doing this call. But the other is that I'm currently the project manager for one of the EarthCube building block projects, and we'll get into that as an example of the community engagement. So Erin Robinson is also on this call, and she's the lead for the community engagement. But I was lucky to get the invitation to do this, so she can chime in as needed. She wants to make a correction. Now, community engagement has a dictionary or Wikipedia entry, and basically it's about getting individuals to build ongoing, robust relationships, and that's what we want EarthCube to be, is an ongoing relationship among scientists and communities, and there's a lot of interdependencies within EarthCube and across the communities that we're trying to bridge. So what we've done in the governance setup and where we are is right now, it's just the test enterprise governance. We're not actually governing EarthCube yet. We are assembling the governance, and so we're in a bootstrapping mode. We've identified a number of crosscuts of the communities, and these include, say, starting at the left, about 10 o'clock, EarthCube Portfolio. That's the current NSF ongoing funded projects for EarthCube. So building blocks, research coordination networks, and conceptual design projects. The industry and free and open source software, instrumentation, software, and technology developers is it's basically an industry community that's self-organized around the concepts and implementation of free and open source software. Data facilities and users, this is a council of the major NSF data centers for geosciences. The ITCS information scientist is another community that's been identified, and there will be a workshop for them. And in fact, is that going on right now? Is that the one going on now? I believe it is. Professional societies include AGU, the American Geophysical Union, the Geological Society of America, a number of other, American Meteorological Association, and some others. And we have representation from the leadership of those societies forming a group. Erin was just saying that the free and open source the industry and FOSS is meeting this week. Then there's end user communities, and these are the communities basically of those sciences that don't necessarily have a large central data facility that's been organized, and this is more the outreach side of EarthCube, is to engage more groups within it. So to help connect them with networking to folks that have resources that can be applied, and so all of these are, let's say, members of these communities constitute the Assembly Advisory Council, and a group of all these it's somewhat hierarchical. There's really some dozens of people involved in coordinating across these, and what we're trying to do is not build new cyber infrastructure so much for EarthCube as to enable sharing of the across the cyber infrastructure that is currently implemented. And community engagement means getting the users and the implementers of these cyber infrastructures together and coordinating. Now, a lot of this we're calling crowdsourcing. This isn't a common use of the term crowdsourcing in that we're not just using general social media, Facebook and so on for EarthCube science, but rather we want to engage the communities that I just listed in self-organizing or bootstrapping the governance itself. So we've got some decision theory, game theory decision tools to use in workshops, and then the various professional journals like AGU and GSA and these conduits to their communities we're using as a way to crowdsource input for the governance of EarthCube. We also have a team within the Secretariat of the test governance, which includes Erin and myself. Steve Diggs is the other member of our community engagement team. He's also the IT lead for the EarthCube governance, and then we have project coordinators, these listed, that are working in Tucson for the Arizona Geologic Survey, and members of these professional societies, assembly liaisons that I mentioned, and a group called the Operations Management Group. So these are all kind of the internal governance group that contributes to community engagement. The goals we have are really to engage with the current community and get more people involved, providing transparency of the process and inclusivity for the activities in it. We want to make sure that anybody who has an interest in participating in some activity and resources to do that can do so. And we can provide some of these resources, but to a great extent, there's self-organizing and kind of self-identifying what groups you want to belong in is part of the job here. Increasing EarthCube recognition across the communities and getting their input into the test enterprise governance. These are our main goals. The ways we're doing that are working with the social media of these professional societies. For instance, the AGU social media folks, they have a very sophisticated use of LinkedIn and different, mainly LinkedIn, for posting blogs and networking among the groups, and then outward to other professional societies and the various domains. We're also not just working in the earth science, but also trying to learn from, say, the biological sciences and the health sciences. And so I plant and I dig bio and some of these activities, science for teams science that's started by the NIH, the National Institutes of Health. There's just a lot of tools and methods that we can start to collaborate with and share because the communications gotten to that stage that we can do this. So we have the EarthCube platform. It's a workspace platform on the web, and these WebEx facilities, like for this webinar, and face-to-face meeting space. We we have a small number of meetings during the year, some for each assembly and some for all hands, and I'll get back to that one toward the end. Providing content about EarthCube, so outreach about what EarthCube is, and getting people to realize that this isn't just something that can happen by accident. We have to work at it, but we want to get people to go beyond their current science, and this is actually a difficulty that the community faces, the broader community faces, because a lot of scientists are not rewarded by their professors or their managers for working on translational issues, like how does another domain use what they've done. They're rewarded for doing pure science or for developing methodology, not for making data exchange about that or doing data management or working on interoperability. Those are not seen as a positive in many cases. And so we're really trying to work with those groups where we can identify this and raise the urgency that data management, data exchange is very much a part of science and leads to synergies that you're not going to get otherwise, because we have a fair amount of duplication of effort at times that can be avoided. So we're trying to find these potentials and create connections between, not just between EarthCube and other relevant activities, but between relevant activities within EarthCube. A lot of the sharing is just within a community, within an application domain or a science domain. So the timeline we have, it's a 2-year timeline. I'm just going to show the first one because the outcome of this is going to feed into a proposal for the next year. But we had our kickoff in October and had a proposed community engagement plan that we presented, and it's 20 pages long. I'm not going to share it right now, but it's on the web, and we can put a link out there if you'd like to see it. It's in Google Docs. We've engaged in a number of outreach and engagement activities, and this is one of them right here, this RCN and these webinars, and working at the professional meetings with booths and then getting the word out through the social media, the professional media and the science media. Then there will be an all-hands meeting, as many folks as can come, in June of this year. The Portfolio Assembly is the one I'm actually directly engaged in, and I'd like to spend a few minutes on that because it's a better example of, it's an example of how EarthCube can work. So there was a workshop held in Boulder just a couple of weeks ago, and the 15 currently funded CDs, BBs, and RCNs had sent delegates, in some cases more than one. And we went through a facilitated workshop for a couple of days and developed, we identified a number of interdependencies. There was synergies and conflicts, and really many more synergies than conflicts. This has been tabulated onto a Google spreadsheet at this link. And then we also developed a coordination guideline document, which is kind of like a charter for the Portfolio Assembly, or the assembly of currently funded NSF projects. And this guideline document is it's about 6 pages, and it's at this web link. There was quite a bit of discussion after the workshop because we were getting kind of finished up on. We're running out of energy by the third day, and so the process for deciding on the guidelines and the issue of how majority rule works or should work was really discussed even more after the workshop. But this is in draft. We can share the content with you and the current draft with you, and welcome any more input on that. Now there's an assembly taking place this week in Boulder for the IT and free and open source software. I mentioned that. And then there's another assembly workshop that's going to be in Washington, D.C. Toward the end of the month, or no, mid-month, March 18th. So these are some particular assembly groups that are meeting, and the one I represent is the one called Integrating Discrete and Continuous Data. It's a building block on integrating discrete and continuous data, and what I've got here is one of my 2 lightning slides that kind of captures most of the project in a nutshell. The idea is to go from gridded data to time series data at a point back and forth. So you can index into the gridded data into a stack of grids with the time series, or you could, on a grid, pick a point and then see the time series. And this involves some information modeling and some data migration and tool development. This right here is this next slide is a prototype example. I've got two points on here: a green one which maps onto this time series curve, and a blue one which maps onto this other time series curve. So it scales these time series, so you can see multiple time series of a variable at points, and you can also index into the time series from this timeline. I mean, you index into the grids. So I could change the overall map just by clicking somewhere else on this timeline, and I would also change where I see this curve. This is not a problem just unique to hydrology and atmosphere, although that's our initial focus. And what we want to do with EarthCube is, the first year, develop this for hydrology and atmosphere variables, and then in the second year, expand with scenarios in solid earth, oceans, and cryosphere. At the workshop, we identified all these connections between my own building block, the Stratigraphy Experimentalist Network, RCN, one on semantics and model coupling, building block, another building block on brokering, another one on an inventory of resources, OceanLink, semantics and ocean scenarios, and web services in terms of lightweight RESTful methods. And we'll be using OGC and GEOS standards and portals. I can talk more about those if somebody's interested. This would provide some alternatives to that might be lighter weight. And then ODSIP has to do with server-side processing of very large data sets, and so we're going to work with them as an application use case, and then apply some of their tools, hopefully. So that's just one snapshot of the interdependencies between some EarthCube projects. So the all-hands meeting is coming up in June, and I hope you'll be able to come to this. There's a registration link somewhere. And then here are some links: Erin and my contact, Steve Diggs, and the community engagement plan.
3 minutes.
Well, I'm done.
Perfect.
So
Thank you, David.
So any questions?
So again, if you have questions, best way to send them in is to send them by chat, and Leslie will read them out.
Thanks, David. So one question we have here is, if I were telling a colleague not currently funded by EarthCube about EarthCube, what benefits should I tell them about for participating in the activity?
That's a real good one. That's probably the most most useful one. I think that this is a long process, and it takes a champion to move any particular domain or activity into a collaborative mode. It's harder to collaborate than it is to do something on your own in isolation, because you have so many other viewpoints to take into account, and it's just hard work. And it needs some facilitation, and it needs kind of an infrastructure to support that, and that's what EarthCube's trying to form. So probably the best thing to do, I don't know, you were asking for benefits. I don't know that there's an immediate benefit to folks that are not engaged in EarthCube. What I guess I was starting to try to, the place I was trying to go was how to get more engaged in EarthCube if you're not. The thing to do would be to identify with projects that are ongoing that seem closest, and then tie onto those, and then network from there. But as far as benefits go, I think that what you might see is some greater recognition of the value of interoperability and the value of data sharing and model sharing and research sharing with publications and data itself, because that's what we're trying to achieve in the community. That's just kind of an ongoing process and fairly gradual. Does that get at it? Erin, do you want to add anything to that?
The only other thing I would add is I think that the benefit that you get from participating in a community like this, or, and by this I mean C4P, or the larger EarthCube effort, is exposure, and your work gets seen by more eyes, and there's the potential for these synergistic connections to happen that you might go further than you could alone. And I think that's the value of community engagement and collaborative projects in my mind.
All right, thank you. We have a couple of questions here about the June All Hands workshop. Can you clarify what are the planned activities and repeat where it's going to be held?
I can take this one. So the All Hands meeting is going to be June 24th to the 26th in Washington, D.C. at the Renaissance Marriott Fremont Circle. And the planned activities, there is, it's a 3-day meeting, or 2.5 days. The first day will be based for groups like this one, the building blocks and the conceptual designs, to have small breakout meetings to come together to work on particular topics. And then there'll be a plenary day where the governance group goes through the charter process that's been happening and evolving over the last year. And there'll be some plenary speakers. And then the last half a day will be, again, business meetings and workshops and breakout sessions and that kind of thing. So the intent is for the meetings to be a lot of working space and to get feedback onto the governance process as it's emerged.
Okay, thanks. The next one is, oh, go ahead, David.
Erin, is there a link that I can put up here? Maybe you can put in chat to an agenda, the tentative agenda.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead, Leslie.
All right, the next question is, do you have any specific plans for engaging students and other college or K-12 into EarthCube activities?
This is primarily focused on higher education at this stage, and we have a real emphasis on graduate students, postdocs, and early career researchers. And I think that there are NSF programs that do outreach to the public school system, the K-12, that we probably could tie into. And so I think, what I'd like to suggest is, if you have some specific interest in this from a K-12 institution or association, email Erin and me, and maybe we can find a way to hook that up. Erin, do you know of any other specific programs?
Nothing else specific. I think that covers it. The one place where I hope that we will see more education, and particularly K-12, is in the last assembly meeting. That's focused more on end users and professional society. We've reached out to the National Environmental Science Teachers Association and GLOBE, which both do K-12 work.
Okay, thanks. There's a follow-up sort of, so how would I tell my own graduate students how to get involved with EarthCube? What is the best way for them to get involved?
I think that might be to go to the EarthCube website, and I'm just going to come over and do that. So if I go to the EarthCube website and look under groups and assembly workshops, find these to attend, sign up for, let's see, is there a place to sign up for alerts, notifications? I guess you'd sign in for that. But this would be, oh, here we go. Further down, you can get some more information on getting involved. So this is really this landing page is the place to start. Now there's a workspace. Oh, actually, let me show you this slide share. First of all, it has a number of resources, and so you can see some of these. They talk about EarthCube, what it is, and what we're doing, and then there's a workspace where the actual project spaces are keeping track, and so for instance, my project is here under building blocks, and so this is the list of building blocks, and then if I go to mine, Discon BB, then and this is true for most of them. You can find out more about the project here, and under the members, there would be some folks that are listed. This may just be the project team, and so you can contact these folks. And you can see I'm just on a public site. I haven't logged in at the moment. So those are the main places: the earthcube.org, and then the workspace and the slide shares.
And C4P has one of these workspaces as well, and I think that they've been adding content under the EarthCube.
Now, do you and some of these actually have more of the work going on in outside of this workspace? So, you know, in some cases they're using Google Docs or Google Sites or some approach that has that works better for that group. So you won't find all the project pages in here. In fact, we're using Google Docs for our file storage for my group.
And the last thing I would add about graduate student involvement, or really anybody's involvement, is I think being involved in C4P is a way of participating in Earth and finding ways that your work that you're already doing aligns with EarthCube initiatives, I think, is probably the best way to make a contribution, so that you're continuing to be productive for yourself. But if you can do it in such a way that you also share it with the community, it's a win for everybody. And a good thesis is a done thesis. So for grad students, I think that's particularly important.
Oh, this is interesting. I just did something illegal. I was going to this one because this one right here is field trips at Yosemite and Owens Valley for getting geologists together with IT guys, computer science geeks that might develop the interfaces for those geologists to use to collect data and interface with the internet. And so it's something that students could get involved in as well. And there's a sign-up deadline of March 10th for this. I'm guessing that the one to contact for this would be, come on, where is it? Maddie Mukherjee is the PI for this project. And I know they have space and all travel is paid. So that would be a neat experience. Okay.
All right, thanks. There are no other questions at this time, but please do just send them in if they come up later, and we'll make sure we get those questions over to David and Erin. And we post the Q&A after each webinar.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, David, and thank you, Erin and Leslie. Our second speaker today is Bob Corrigan of the Smithsonian, who will be speaking about the Encyclopedia of Life. And you may begin when ready.
I'm looking out on the National Museum of, from the National Museum of Natural History over Constitution Avenue towards the IRS building, so I've got that looming over me. I'm going to give you an update on the activity of the Encyclopedia of Life, tell you a little bit about the organization, and then I'm going to review the 3 strategic areas that we're currently investing in and seeking partnerships. I think that'll give you a very firm idea of where we're heading into the future. I'm happy to say that Encyclopedia of Life as a concept includes things that live now and things that used to live. So we are making some significant investments in improving our content and data holdings in the paleobiology world. So that's bringing us into close contact with your community as well as a number of other communities here. My role with EOL is as head of operations. I have a degree in microbiology, but I spent 20 years in the high-tech industry, built and run organizations, and have a background in software engineering, in product marketing, product management, and operations. So I have a bit of a different background than those of my research colleagues, and I know enough to close my mouth and listen when there are things going on that involve topics I know nothing about. So a lot of what was discussed in the previous discussion may have gone completely past me. And some of your questions, if they are very closely related to paleobiology topics, may also escape me, but I'll make sure to find out how to answer them for you. So I'll cover the background of EOL, we'll share where it is today, talk about current projects, and then I welcome your comments. EOL as an idea has been around for a long, long time. The idea of aggregating knowledge of biodiversity, current and extinct, into some sort of aggregated spot where it can be used for discovery, education, any number of different purposes. This idea had been around for a number of years. Ed Wilson, back in about 7-8 years ago, published a paper called the Encyclopedia of Life, and then when he won his TED Prize in 2007, stood up on stage at the TED conference and asked that we as a humanity create something like this so that we would have the data resources we need to make better decisions across the globe affecting a number of different topics. At that point, the MacArthur and Sloan Foundation, along with 5 founding institutions here in the U.S., were in the room. EOL has grown since then to be an organization that has not just participants in the English-speaking world, but the Chinese, the Spanish, the Arabic-speaking world. In fact, the EOL interface has 18 different languages it supports, and we are bringing in rich content on about half a dozen languages. We have recently negotiated a content exchange with our colleagues in France, so we're going to have a very substantial ingestion of biodiversity information in French languages. So if you think of EOL really as a vast aggregated collection, it has grown in the last few years to what we see as a critical mass. We now have information on about 1.4 million of the 1.9 million named species. This is 6 million data objects. The number of content partners has increased since this slide was created. We're well north of that. If you're ever curious where EOL is on any given day, you can go to the EOL.org homepage, scroll down the page, and there's a statistics bar down there. We also are very happy to link in 50 million pages of literature that's been OCR'd and scanned coming from the Biodiversity Heritage Library. It's turning out this is an enormously useful resource for researchers, not just to be able to get back to the original literature, but that you have in effect a full research library available to you wherever you are in the world, linked to the names of the species that occur on those pages. It's also being used very actively as a source for data mining, for digging out data tables, and for a number of purposes in the humanities. There are beautiful etchings, beautiful color blocks and plates in the BHL. So all that being said, I was out at the MacArthur Foundation last week, and I put this up on the slide. This is a new dam in China. EOL really is, in a way, could be seen as a huge reservoir. And it took reservoir-like dollars to put it together. About $25 million of direct investment, roughly the same amount in in-kind contributions from the original 5 member institutions, and now about a dozen more around the world. And if you were in the corporate world, you could say we've gone past the early kind of the angel phase. We've completed our A round, and now we're entering the B round of funding and of work. And what that means is we're moving from building a reservation to, building a reservoir, to understanding what it is that people actually want to do with the water, and finding ways to deliver Encyclopedia of Life to them and the data from EOL to them in ways that make sense and that are going to help them achieve their goals. So we're moving from, think of EOL as the primary actor, the first actor on the marquee, to becoming more of a research infrastructure initiative, both content, expertise, and data infrastructure. So with that in mind, these are the 3 communities that this core EOL reservoir serves. We are interested in serving the research community across a broad range of biodiversity and biological sciences topics. We're interested in serving the education community, and we're interested in providing resources that help communities of practice and interest do a better job of engaging their audiences. And I'll talk to you about what each of these are in order. The first being Trait Bank, the second concept we're building called the Biodiversity Discovery Network, and the third concept called EOL Theme Portals. From a sustainability perspective, EOL is maintained in kind of at a core level through its member institutions, through contributions from our visitors, through grants, and through some of our philanthropic contacts. But our goal is not to rely on kind of the kindness of strangers, so to speak, but our goal is to deliver services and expertise in a way that allows us to be sustainable over time. And through market research and validation with a variety of different parties all around the world, these are the 3 areas that are going to help us move to that, so that EOL is a self-sustaining operating practice well into the future. So Trait Bank was launched in the middle of the first month of this year, middle of January. And if you're familiar with GenBank, you know that's a comprehensive digital repository of gene sequences. Well, Trait Bank aspires to do the same, but for organism traits, measurements, interactions, and to do so at the same ambitious scope that EOL aspires to and that GenBank aspires to across the entire tree of life. When we launched Trait Bank, we wanted to be as ecumenical as we could in terms of the types of content we brought in. We brought in information not just on marine, but on marine species, which was our funder's focus, but on plants, on insects, on a variety of life forms, and we brought in data that goes up the tree of life, so aggregated data at a genera, family, and higher. You can access Trait Bank today by going to the EOL website, go to any species page, and you'll see on the species page an overview of the data, the traits that are contained, and there's a data tab on every EOL species page, every taxon page, and that tab illuminates the information that you have. So here's an example. So for the giant panda, everybody loves the giant panda. We especially do here in DC. You'll see that EOL has data for 32 traits, and these are examples. When we were building Trait Bank, we spent an awful lot of time with the scientific community to understand what sort of information they need about every individual measurement, every individual fact, to give them confidence that it comes from a trusted source, to help them understand the provenance, the measurement techniques that were used to acquire it, to get back to the original source data set, the original material, and also to find ways to access this information in ways that are very quick, allow for searching, and allow for download. So here, looking at the American black bear, I've transitioned from the panda as I just got back from Chicago, and they like bears there. Looking at life history and behavior, we have this information for clutch brood-sized litter, home range, behavioral and circadian rhythm, age of first birth. That comes from a variety of different data sources. If you open up any one of them, you'll see a glossary description. You'll also see data regarding the data point, the paper it came from, the measurement method. Each one of these data points in EOL and EOL Trait Bank has its own URL, its own durable, referenceable URL. What we're discovering by standing up this resource is that we're actually coming to the research community at a time when it's really looking for data it can use for modeling, it could use for any number of different purposes. And we were really kind of surprised and a little delighted when the folks from Microsoft Research got in touch with us and immediately started giving us, think of them as orders. Can you find this? Can you help us get this data into Trait Bank? Building ecosystem models, they need a list of parts. They need data across the tree of life, across a variety of different taxa, across a variety of different life history and measurements. So Trait Bank right now is in the process of acquiring new data sets. We're interested in data about just about anything. So if you have paleobiological data, if you've got information about extant species, whatever it is, we're going to take a look at it. We're focusing on ecological data, we're focusing on invasive, noxious, and alien species, and we're focusing on data sets that are being published through some of our publisher partners, so Pensoft and Plotzy. We're very lucky to have connectors into them, so as data papers are published there, we can import them into EOL. The second of the three areas of effort for EOL today is in providing, think of it as data infrastructure and community infrastructure for the world of citizen science. The fact is we've been spending a lot of time over the last few years looking at this space. We've done some work with the iNaturalist team. We've been working through the Global BioBlitz community and paying attention to what the community of people out there doing, either professional or amateur or just casual citizen science, what do they need? And it's become pretty clear that to satisfy this kid, what the heck is it? Well, that's one problem. And there are any number of different things that you can offer this kid to help identify a critter or a bug or plant in the field. But the broader challenge of citizen science, it really speaks to how do we activate large numbers of people to become active observers of the natural world for any number of different purposes. There was a group out at the Chicago Botanic Garden I met with last week that is really interested not just in finding news about the spread of known invasive species, buckthorn, garlic mustard, but they're interested in getting as many people as possible to pay attention to new invasives, to things that shouldn't be there but they're worried about showing up. Hydrilla, they're looking about the expansions in the range of stink bugs. They're looking at any number of different noxious and invasive species that might be leading indicators of climate change, of destruction of habitat, of changes in how transportation of certain goods across straight lines is introducing new invasives coming along board with other species. So the challenge of creating infrastructure to support all these people is very significant, and it's urgently needed because today, while there are lots and lots of these citizen science projects, there are lots of people doing data gathering. The data tends to be isolated with inconsistent standards for how the data is captured. The data ends up either being inaccessible to the people who did the capturing or is there only for a short amount of time. For programs that want to reach in and access it, there are few, if any, standards for data access in terms of computable data access. And we're finding that infrastructure, durable, reliable infrastructure, is expensive. And for organizations that want to focus more of their energy on training, facilitation, identification, doing the science, the infrastructure is getting in their way, and they end up either going cheap on it or they do the minimal possible to be successful. Over time, our goal is to work with organizations that have a deep interest in gathering this information. What you see here is an example of a for-profit education startup that's building a massively multiplayer earth science education game in which leveling up in the game requires that you do things in the natural world. And they're aligning their work with curriculum standards in Common Core and next generation science standards. They are actively working to raise money, and they are using EOL and our proposed biodiversity discovery network as infrastructure to support it. We're also working closely with our international partners in Australia and Mexico and Norway and in Egypt, all of whom have national reasons to want to create broad-based data gathering systems, and they're very interested in making sure that they build these things in a way that the data can be interoperable with data gathered in other countries for other purposes. So the third and final category of activities from the Encyclopedia of Life I want to share with you is the one I've actually spent the most time talking to our paleobiology friends about, and that is the idea that the Encyclopedia of Life on its own is really not a tool that organizations want to, well, they don't want to share with their communities because the EOL doesn't reflect their brand. It doesn't reflect the content that is most interesting to them. It has all content. It doesn't present an experience that's appropriate to them. It's essentially everything. And finally, it doesn't offer pathways to engagement that are appropriate to their communities. It doesn't offer links back to their digital properties. It doesn't produce what I would call exceptional traffic of people who are setting out to accomplish a specific goal. So what makes the idea of a theme portal interesting is that now EOL can serve as a content syndication platform. Using EOL as a way of organizing, storing, and maintaining data, we can choose exactly what folks want to show and push it to a new type of interface that's very different from the Encyclopedia of Life, and I'm going to show you an example of that. And by doing this, we can present species information in ways that make sense to the audiences of our sponsors on whatever devices are appropriate, with the right calls to action, with the organization's branding and messaging, and deep connections to their other web properties. We've tested this with a variety of different potential sponsors here in North America and around the world. I mentioned we're in talks with the French, and out there in Paris, they've got a wonderful zoo associated with the Musée d'Histoire. The sense is like a number of zoos presenting species information within a workable context in a way that makes sense to the people who are encountering it can be real challenging. An infrastructure that makes that easier to do, infrastructure that makes it faster to bring about and more sustainable is really interesting to them and to others. So whereas this is what the Eastern Gorilla page looks like on EOL, the reservoir of all information, an example of what it might look like for a theme portal is this. And we're envisioning this primarily as web pages, HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript, but we're also envisioning implementing this in ways that can be pushed to apps or even printed out in field guides. And in this case, in this mock-up, you're seeing a mock-up for the Bronx Zoo that's been prepared for the regular visitor. If you were presenting a scientific theme portal, it might be organized with lists of species. It might have diagnostic photos. In this case, it's organized the different exhibits within the Bronx Zoo, and EOL is being presented as an ingredient, not as the overall brand. The taxon page is also very different in a theme portal. Here, it's organized in a very engaging, much more photocentric manner, and individuals browsing a theme portal can go from learning a little bit about a topic to learning a lot more about a topic. We also see within the theme portal concept, it's really important to build interfaces that reflect the users who will be using it. And again, whether it's a scientific, a policy audience, general public, education, the different templates will come out of the box with certain ways of presenting it, but we also see an opportunity to customize these templates over time. If any of you are familiar with Tumblr, people have compared the concept of an EOL theme portal to Tumblr for biodiversity. We'll also make sure that the content either is sourced from EOL, is custom written to the specific needs of the client, or adapted from content that they provide us within certain limits of certain number of articles per theme portal. Again, using EOL as a repository for this information, all of the information in EOL is Creative Commons licensed or public domain. That also applies to not just the articles, but the data, the photos, the videos, the sounds, the maps, the literature, the links. Everything available for reuse, everything free. And finally, the infrastructure is the piece that makes this work. It's using the established proven infrastructure of the Encyclopedia of Life as a content syndicator and pushing whatever is appropriate to a theme portal. We're able to maintain it at a fraction of the cost of what it would cost an organization to stand one of these up on their own. And we're also able to provide a level of reporting on how it's used, when it's used, and to what extent it's being effective back to the client. So as a wrap-up, I've talked a lot about where we're going. Early on, you heard that we have Trait Bank, that we've got information on 1.4 million species, but I found myself at a meeting in, of all places, Canberra back in January. And this is a shot on the road just north of Tidbinbilla Nature Preserve, which is near Canberra in southeastern Australia. It was enormously hot. In the Tidbinbilla Reserve, there are families of koalas. So these are females and juveniles. And I saw a bunch of females, saw a bunch of juveniles, and it wasn't clear to me, well, how many juveniles do females have? I mean, do they single births, multiple births, and how long before they can have, you know, another baby koala? And I was able, due to the fact there's actually very good Wi-Fi there, to bring up the koala page on EOL, go to the data tab under life history and behavior, and saw, okay, they can have an average 102, 1.29, 1 liter per year. They live about 20 years, and could find the data source that that particular fact came from. If we can do this across all of existing and extinct life, we can start making connections between what we see and what we know about them, and do some really immediate and interesting research about how these different life forms either connect today or used to connect. Get access to that information and plug it into whatever research we do. We could start making use of the Encyclopedia of Life as a powerful research infrastructure. We could also use this infrastructure to help get more people paying attention to the world around them, and finally present information in ways that make sense to communities of practice, and do so in a way that I think really keeps people engaged about the natural world. We're delighted to have opportunities to chat with any of you. Our paleo holdings are growing. We currently support the classification from the paleobiology database. We're working to import more content from them. We spent a bunch of time talking to Mark. Hopefully he's on the call, Mark Ewan. We are working with our Department of Paleobiology here to help develop and deliver content and certain experiences for the new Deep Time Hall that is going on here at the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History. And I think the thing that's most exciting for me about working with this community is it represents an opportunity to bring information together that people are truly hungry for, not just the experts, but people of all ages. So that's the presentation I prepared for you. I know that you probably have a lot of questions. I'm happy to answer as many of them as I can now, or at a later time through any of the coordinates listed on this screen. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob, for a great presentation, and open for questions.
Okay, thanks, Jack. The first question is, what cyber infrastructure challenges did you meet while building and maintaining EOL? And how do you determine and meet your cyber infrastructure needs?
Let me just write those down. So my background is as the most significant part of my background is as a software product manager. The original version of EOL, those of you who recall, stood up in 2008, was live for a day, and promptly crashed. When we look at what we did then and what we do now to establish a robust cyber infrastructure, we look at a couple different variables. Uptime and availability is top performance. We use our data center is at the Harvard Research Data Facility in Boston. Cambridge. We use a variety of different reporting and analysis tools. We focus a lot on New Relic, but we have some custom stuff we've built. We are primarily a MySQL backend running Ruby on Rails. We do have the new Trait Bank product is running on a triple store, so we use appropriate database technologies for the different needs within the product. When we as a, let me put it this way, when I as a product manager sit down with the development team, and we have a dedicated development team for the Encyclopedia of Life as well as a number of volunteers, it's important that I talk about what I need, not how I need it done. And the negotiation that takes place is always around kind of speed, quality, and feature set, and you could have two of those. So when we set out to create a cyber infrastructure, after the debacle, the first version, when I came in 2010, our goal was to create a framework for scalability so that we could continue to add users. Right now, we had about 5 million unique users last year. On any given day, we're getting about 30,000 visitors. So practically speaking, this makes us the largest of the National Museum of Natural History's web properties. We're not seeing transaction volumes anywhere near large OLTP systems, but we're seeing about, at peak, about 200 concurrent users in the system doing a variety of different things, hitting the database in different ways. So scalability and uptime are the two primary challenges that we address. And we address that by setting up a complex of bare iron, running a lot of virtual machines. I can provide some deeper detail on the technology configuration if folks are interested in. The primary way we manage on a day-to-day basis is that we pay attention to the volume. We know when our peak seasons are, and we provision and deprovision different virtual machines to handle load balancing. We pay attention to memory. We pay attention to keeping certain aspects of the system isolated. So when we do a deploy of a new system, we have a version on the side that we do the deploy to, and then we do a flip. It gets fairly complicated. What I'm happy to say is that we are running at about 2 nines. Sometimes we get to about 3 nines of availability, and that's entirely, I think, testament to the IT and the DevOps team who are running EOL up in Boston and Woods Hole. Hopefully that was the expressive answer to your short question.
Yes, thank you very much for that. Very detailed. I'm sure we may have more follow-up on that later, either now or after the workshop. So the next question is, what are your mechanisms for getting feedback from users and determining future directions? What has worked the best for getting useful feedback?
Well, one of the challenges we have is that there's a question of scale. When you ask, it's always good to ask people what they think, but you typically need to ask a lot of them to make it meaningful. But there's a point beyond which, statistically, you've asked enough people. When we were moving from version 1, which was the version of EOL that was launched in 2008, and we entered the requirements phase for version 2, which was launched in the fall of 2011, primary development of the requirements on that began in mid-year 2010. So we had about a 6 months of requirements, market research, mock-up development, testing of the minimally viable product. And people told us to go in all kinds of wacky directions. Part of the challenge of gathering feedback is, unless you're looking through the lens of what your strategic goals are, all feedback is good. What we knew is that we needed to build a high-performance repository first. This thing needed to scale. It needed to accommodate both articles, photos, videos, data. It needed to be multilingual. It needed to be accessible. So with those as the foundation, we worked within that strategic framework to get feedback from people on the capabilities that we should have. As a product manager, I did an awful lot of one-on-one interviews to build a basic set of feedback, and then extrapolated that to some surveys. That's the primary method of feedback. Now, the second method of feedback relates to when you're assessing a strategic direction. In the case of EOL version 2, we had a very highly performant database, but it was a reservoir. And going into the market from a sustainability perspective and interviewing organizations to understand what they would want of EOL in order to invest in it, either as a philanthropic perspective, a grant perspective, or a direct sponsorship perspective. There we not only got market feedback, but we went and developed some business models. And the business model development process is something I would invite everybody to do, because it puts the challenge of sustainability first and really forces you to look at your market. The only thing worse than having no customers is having one customer. And if you want to build something to be sustainable, you have to have a large enough market you're interested in serving so that you can capture a reasonable amount of share at a reasonable cost and have that meet your goals over time. So just as by means of an example, the EOL theme portal, our market research suggests there are about 20,000 organizations in North America that could, within a fairly narrow description of the potential of the market types they occupy, collections and conservation organizations. And 2% share of that is not unreasonable in 4 to 6 years. And based on our market planning, that gives us enough service revenue back to EOL to keep us sustainable going forward. So that's one of the ways in which we evaluated the market and got feedback to whether or not people are interested. In fact, part of my reason of presenting to you today was to share the 3 dimensions of the work that we're doing and see what resonates with you. So market testing is something you always do. It's like shaving. If you don't do it, you're a bum.
Okay, thanks. Jack, can I check with you on the time?
We are at time here. It's been a very interesting conversation. So let's do one more question at this point. Thank you.
Okay. The next question, and we will be forwarding you a bunch more questions. The next one is, how big an operation is EOL? How many people are working for it?
Let me just get a number. Full-time staff is 13. We also have a network of curators. There are about 2,000 named curators, and Pareto's law is definitely in effect there. About anywhere from 10 to 20% of them are active. We have a network of contributors from our partners around the world who all do different things. So there's a team of 2 in China that's working on internationalization. There's a team of anywhere from 1 to 2 FTEs in Egypt that works on data replication and mirroring. There are individuals at a partner in Australia that work on citizen science infrastructure. And we have some colleagues in Norway who are giving thought to creating a Sparkle endpoint associated with the new triple store that we've stood up to make EOL truly kind of semantically visible to the linked open data cloud. So at any given time of that team, there are a certain number of people working on content. There are a certain number of people who are working on education and outreach, and there are a certain number of people who are working on technology. And then there's a core team of in our secretariat. We also receive some institutional help through our partners to do things like PR, communications, design, and we also are very grateful to Harvard University, who provides us with support for the EOL data center. On top of that, we have a executive committee. The executive chair, Graham Higley, is in England, and there are representatives on the executive committee of all participating EOL institutions that are making some form of investment. And I would not, it would not be right of me not to acknowledge the fact that these leaders are working for EOL and that they are advocates for EOL, and often refers of new content partners, new technology ideas, new user communities, and they keep us on the straight and narrow.
Great. Well, thank you, Bob, and thanks to David also. This has been a great pair of talks. And just to kind of wrap up and remind folks that this webinar will be available both at the EarthCube website and at the C4P YouTube channel. And for future webinars, please check the C4P webinar schedule at the earthcube.org website. Thanks again to our presenters, and thanks to all for attending.